a modernist pioneer, a teacher and a writer, an architectural practitioner of the highest order. For 6 decades, Moshe Safdie has championed humane design, mixed-use planning, civic-minded construction, principles that redefine our collective relationship with the built environment. Moshe rose to prominence as the designer of Habitat 67, a model community and housing complex built as a pavilion for Expo 67 in Montreal, a project that began, it bears mentioning, as his master's thesis. Habitat 67 is the first of nearly 50 buildings designed by Moshe and his firm Safdie Associates. Libraries, science centers, museums, airports, art galleries, and more at locations around the world. Luckily for Savanians, you don't have to go far to see a standout example of his work. He designed the Jepson Center at the Telfair Museum, just a few blocks from where we sit today. For his enduring contributions to the field of architecture, Moshe has been named to the Companion of the Order of Canada and received a Massey Medal for Architecture and a gold medal from the Royal Architectural Institute of Canada. As a longtime professor of architecture, Moshe inspired generations of students with an outlook imparted to him by his own mentor, legendary architect Lou Kahn, who said architecture is reaching out for the truth. In Moshe's practice, the truth is an intuitive understanding that apart from their architects and designations, built spaces allow for the trade of ideas and the exploration of new frontiers, conveying moods and creating atmospheres, and heightening every human interaction they contain.
I believe that public cultural buildings should be extrovert. They should be transparent. The city should be seeing what's going on in them. You should see the city from within them.
Please join me in welcoming 2013 SCAD Commencement speaker, a visionary architect of our time, Moshe Safdie.
Thank you, Alan, for your generous words. President Wallace, parents and families, faculty, and greetings to the class of 2013. You have all chosen art and design as the focus for your life's journey. Whatever the passion, whatever the motivation that led you to it, you have chosen a field that will deeply affect the lives of people. Whatever act of design reciprocates in the life of people. You must recognize the power of design, but with it comes an extraordinary responsibilities. I was thinking back to where I was at this stage of your life, this moment. I was wanting to change the world, and I was not sure how to go about it. In my 5th year of a 6-year architecture program at McGill, the Canadian government created a traveling scholarship. One student from each school of architecture would travel the continent to study housing. I joined 5 others as we traveled to Philadelphia, Chicago, New York, Los Angeles. This was 1959. We visited public housing projects, 30, 40 stories high, double-loaded dark corridors, compact apartments with little balconies with screens in front of them. Families who were unhappy in these buildings. This was no home. And then we went to suburbia. There was lots of suburbia. We went to Levittown to see the fulfillment of the American dream. Each family with its house and its garden. And I came back thinking of the paradox. On one hand, people hated high-density, high-rise housing. Whether they were affluent or poor, this was not the housing of choice. What they wanted is a house and a garden. But the dispersal and land waste of suburbia was not sustainable. The ideal of garden and house had to be achieved with urban densities that we could sustain. And so I thought we must invent something new, a new typology. I decided to do this for my thesis. I went and cleaned out the toy shops with all the Lego sets that were available. And I started piling up those Lego boxes, one on top of the other, each forming a garden on the roof of the unit below, weaving streets through, and soon this became my graduation thesis. 2 years later, I had the good fortune to be in Philadelphia apprenticing with Louis Kahn, the great American architect. One day my professor showed up from McGill, and he said, Montreal is going to have a World's Fair. I'd like you to come back and join us to develop the master plan. Cheekily, I asked, would I be allowed to propose my thesis as a central theme pavilion for the World's exhibition? You could do what you want, the professor said. I returned to Montreal and gathered a small team, got the funding from the expo, and for a few months we toiled day and night to make this bold proposal. Eventually, we went to the cabinet of the federal government in the presence of Prime Minister, where I made a presentation. A few days later, Colonel Churchill from the Corps of Engineers, who was in charge of building the World's Fair, called me in. He said, Moshe, your plan has been approved. He then, with a straight face, said, now you are fired. Go set up your own office. It's your idea. You should do it in your own office. Though I was young, 25, and inexperienced, I realized that making architecture is not an individual act. It's a team effort of many disciplines, many talents. And the first thing I did is gather such a team. And in 1967, as we opened Habitat, when the World's Fair opened, I was ready to conquer the world. Everything would be possible after that. After all, we had built Habitat. And the commissions came in, Habitat New York, Habitat Puerto Rico, Habitat in Washington, in Jerusalem. And yet, one by one, they failed, they were aborted. There were many reasons, complexities, they did not get built. And my dream for realizing on a mass basis high-density housing remained elusive. 15 years later, another break. We won a competition for Columbus Center in the heart of New York by Central Park. Mixed use, high density, it was all there. For 3 years, we toiled, plans, details, ready to start construction. And again, controversy erupted. There were groups led by Jacqueline Onassis Kennedy with black umbrellas walking Central Park, saying the building will cast a shadow. That was not good stuff. And then Wall Street crashed, and I was fired. I had to lay off 40 people in one day. The project was not to be. And I thought my world has come to an end. I will never get out of that one. And yet, something pushed me forward. We were on to the next and next project, and somehow managed to keep going. Until now, I've spoken mostly about the qualities that are helpful for a designer: critical observation, imagination, curiosity, acting on your ideas, persistence, patience. But I want to come back to the question of responsibility and values. When I was a student, the rave was Ayn Rand's The Fountainhead. I remember Gary Cooper as Howard Roark in the movie. Many of us went to architecture because of that image of the hero, artist, in the Nietzschean sense, who's conquering the world. But Howard Roark was all about self-fulfillment. He never thought or spoke of others. You are graduating into an era and a culture where you will be told the market knows best. There are many seductions and temptations out there. But you will find out that design is not always in the service of people. It's often in the interest of vested interest. As Octavio Paz, the great Mexican philosopher, said, "The market is blind and deaf. It is not fond of literature. It does not know how to choose. Its censorship is not ideological. It has no ideas. It knows all about prices, but nothing about values." If I had a singular advice to you, I would say, every time you take the pencil, the brush, the computer, and create, try to identify completely with the people who will be affected by what you do. If you can become them, it's halfway to victory. As for values, you have to look to yourself. Some years ago, I wrote a book entitled Form and Purpose, and I concluded it with a poem which was my I belief. He who seeks truth shall find beauty. He who seeks beauty shall find vanity. He who seeks order shall find gratification. He who seeks gratification shall be disappointed. He who considers himself the servant of his fellow beings shall find the joy of self-expression. He who seeks self-expression shall fall into the pit of arrogance. Arrogance is incompatible with nature. Through nature, the nature of the universe and the nature of man, we shall seek truth. If we seek truth, we shall find beauty. Thank you, and good luck to you all.